diplomatic service and international relations, and also we have the career story of one of the former members of parliament, and that will be the discussion. We were supposed to have a representative of
Marcel, after you turn that on.
We were supposed to have a representative of NATO to speak today, but she couldn't make it. She actually fell sick in last couple of days, and yesterday she said she didn't want to infect anyone, so she couldn't make it today. Let me introduce the deputy head of mission of Chile, who will start this session by 10 minutes. Representation of career paths on diplomatic service, his personal story and skills and knowledge that are necessary for this type of career, and then we'll move to the next speakers. Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this invitation. Nice view from here. This is a very interesting experience for you to learn firsthand what from career diplomats and representative of international organization about international organizations, diplomats and roles for young people like you. Probably if I would have been sitting like you 25 years ago in a similar seminar, I wouldn't be here now, but probably I will tell you a little more about my story or my history with diplomacy and a career in foreign affairs. As I was introduced, I'm the deputy head of mission at the Chilean embassy here in London for the last 2 years. I'm a Chilean foreign service diplomat for 25 years, so some of you, or most of you, were not even born when I thought about getting into the foreign service. Let me speak a bit about my career and then my thoughts about diplomacy now, today, and the future of diplomacy and the role of diplomats. I've written some papers on these issues, so I'm very interested in the role of diplomats in the 21st century. My career, or the Chilean system for diplomats, is we have a professional diplomatic corps. We study between 1 and 2 years in the diplomatic academy. It was created like 60 years ago. You have to have a professional degree to get into diplomatic corps. Academic degree, like a lawyer, like a journalist, historian, economist. But we have cases of colleagues who are doctors or geographers or people, anthropologists, and so it's a very open possibility of careers to get into the diplomatic academy. Once you get into diplomatic academy, what they try to do is try to create like a minimum common denominator of everybody. So they give lessons of law for people who are not lawyers and lessons of economy for people who are not economists. So they try to level everybody in a certain generalist view of different issues, as well as protocol and consular affairs and foreign policy and foreign international relations, those kind of issues, and also Chilean culture. That's very, very important when you are abroad to know more of your country. Usually people don't know a lot about the country, so it's a good opportunity to learn about culture, traditional knowledge, geography, all kind of those issues. Once you finish the diplomatic academy, you go from around 1 year, 1.5 years of training within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and then you're posted. Our system of posting is it's 5 years abroad, 2 years in Chile, so we go 5-2, 5-2, 5-2. Usually 5 years abroad is 5 years. You cannot get more than that. In Chile, you can stay longer. That's an issue of totally about remuneration, about salary. You get better paid abroad than in Chile. The Ministry has no problem if you stay longer in Chile getting paid. In our system, and probably most of foreign services, there is no incentive to become a specialist. You're usually a person who knows a lot, little things about a lot of issues. You don't go very deep because we are a small foreign service, so then you cannot have specialists in different issues, human rights or consular. although people tend to define the careers on some issues, but there's no guarantee that you can follow your career. Let's say if you're interested in nuclear arms or disarmament or foreign trade, you can ask for posting there, but there's no guarantee that you can continue your career. So in general, our system creates generalists, what you call generalists, compared to other systems where you create specialists. In our case, the specialists are people who are based in Chile, and they are the ones that have all the knowledge and experience in specific issues, law of the seas, Antarctica, or again nuclear disarmament or foreign trade. So we, the ones who are abroad, we feed back into what the people are working, the specialists in Chile, and we get instruction from them to do whatever they ask us to do here, to make a representation to in this case the UK government, or to attend a seminar on certain issues, or follow up a publication, or follow up a study, or certain trend in foreign affairs in a specific country, in this case the United Kingdom. In my case, my career was a little different. I studied law. I wanted to always become a diplomat. I studied law because it was a prerequisite. It was one of the careers that was a prerequisite to get into the foreign service. I didn't like numbers, so I didn't go to economy and the rest. So I went to law, studied 5 years of law, and then I got into the diplomatic academy. But then in my first posting, I studied 1 year paid by the ministry. I was lucky. At Georgetown University in Washington, and then I stayed for 4 years at the embassy there. But then I went into the trade office. I'm going back to Chile. I've been very lucky because I could advance my career in foreign trade. So I've been always posted in missions, particularly in WTO, in the World Trade Organization in Geneva, on trade affairs. This is my first time in the last 20 years, something like that I'm coming to a political position at an embassy, like a bilateral embassy, like the embassy in London. That's not very usual. It's very common. Usually you tend to move, and then you move from a consulate to international organization mission to a political embassy to a trade office. I've been lucky, and I'm very much like the way my career has developed. So I'm very lucky about that. Now, in terms of the role of the diplomat today, 21st century. This is something that a lot, if not all, the foreign, and probably the representative of the foreign office told you a little more about that. They just created the diplomatic academy and the foreign office, and they have a new thinking about what the diplomat. So a lot of foreign ministries are redesigning their foreign services. Having in mind this globalized world and a lot of changes that happen in the world in the last 2 decades, 20 years. We are going through that process as well in Chile. We are in the process of what we call the modernization of our system. You have to imagine that diplomacy, or traditional diplomacy, was based on an ambassador, diplomats who came across the seas, traveling, let's say, from Chile to London. A month sailing without any contact with the capital, with Chile. So this person had to have certain skills, and had very broad instructions. So his role was very much going to speak with the king or the prime minister or whoever was the head of state or head of government in the country. So he had a very broad capacity to negotiate and to deal and develop a relationship with that country. On the contrary, he also was limited in terms of I think what I can do is this, but he didn't have a very precise instruction. That changed, of course, with telegraphy and with modern communication. Nowadays, ambassadors, diplomats probably didn't have too much space to move. They have instructions, and through the WhatsApp or even encrypted communications, the capitals, they are instructing them 1 minute to minute what they can do and when they can do, and they all can ask for instructions. So the scope of the ambassador and diplomat is much limited in that way. The capital knows that they can send you instructions immediately when you ask for something. So this is happening, what can I do? And they send you instructions immediately. So that changed the dynamic of the relationship. The dynamic of the relationship changed also. Traditionally, the role of the diplomat was to inform what's going on in the country. You read the newspapers, and then you wrote long reports about what's going on. Let's say Brexit, you reported what's all about. Nowadays, that's completely useless because everybody in Santiago and Chile or any capital of the world, they read the Financial Times, they read the Time, they read the press or whatever the press, their interest. So they know exactly what's going on. There's no need for us to rush and send news about what's going on in the country. So in that sense, the role changed a little or a lot. No? Now what the capital wants is more analysis. No? What do you think? What the ambassador, what the diplomats think is going to happen? Let's say with Brexit. No, this is our assessment. No, this is what we listen around in the city. What we go to seminars. We meet with people from parliament, with the business community, with academics, and we process all that, and then we send our assessment, all that. You're also competing with economists and other newspapers or companies or agencies or even the city, that makes this. Some of them are free, but some of them can be bought in Santiago. So you're also competing with this assessment. But then your comparative advantage with that is that you're adding the Chilean perspective, no? Because I'm always thinking, okay, Brexit, we are assessing what Brexit may happen to the UK, but also what will be the impacts in our countries in terms of trade. For example, we have a free trade agreement with the European Union, so what happens with the United Kingdom if they leave the European Union? Do we need to negotiate a free trade agreement with the United Kingdom? Are we willing to that? Is the UK willing to that? So as the Chilean perspective, the national perspective, and if you want to go a little more in detail, we have not only the Chilean perspective, but the perspective of the government in this moment in Chile. And we want to go even more deeper than you have the Chilean perspective of the government in power in Chile, and the vision or the objectives of the power of the government in power in Chile. So the analysis is much thinner and much more detailed than what you can buy from these companies or analysis that can be done by a big bank in the city. So that means that the people who are, again, I was trained 25 years ago, so I not necessarily represent this new thinking or the new training of people in the Chilean Diplomatic Academy. In our system, you used to go to the Diplomatic Academy for 1-2 years, and then you didn't get any more training, probably until you were like 40, 45 years old. So that means 15, 20 years of career. Then when you want to get into the last level in the career, then you got some training in terms of leadership and strategic thinking. That was it. Nowadays, you have to train the people, the diplomats, almost on a constant basis. No? Every 5 years when they go back to Chile, they have training, new training. There's a lot of e-training, of course, using the advantage of internet and all that. In terms of analysis, in terms of political thinking, in terms of strategic thinking, leadership, of course, for more senior level. So the element of training and generation, development of skills, it becomes more and more urgent nowadays than it was 25 years ago, or at least in our case, I guess, in most foreign services. Diplomats in general, leaving aside this analysis or this capacity to look into what's going on in the country, has to be a very adaptable person. They have to in our case, because you are moving a lot around, and you're not following a career, except some exception, including myself, but in general, you can be doing human rights one day, and then the following day you're in consul in southern Argentina, and then you can be doing Antarctic or polar issues back in Santiago. So there has to be a person who is very adaptable, and particularly not only in terms of career, but also in terms of living. And that gets more living in terms of family, I'm saying, to adapt to a new city, a new reality, a new culture. And that's getting more and more difficult, at least in our system, mainly because of family. Families, it's becoming more and more an issue all over the world, not only for diplomats. Okay, you are not born to work only. You have a family, you want to live, and you want to after 5 o'clock, you want to be with your family or your friends. That's making more and more difficult for a diplomat to pick a place where to get posted, but also to move with all the family and all the stuff. I always tell young diplomats in Chile, no, the difference 25 years ago is very particular to Chile. Chile was a country who was beginning to grow economically, but we were still very far away from developed markets in terms of standards of living, in terms of communication, in terms of what you could get in a supermarket or even internet about didn't exist then. So we were the gap between Chile and, let's say, United Kingdom was very big. So there was an incentive to go to United Kingdom as well. Okay, we can teach our students, or we can put our students in better schools, we can have a better standard of living, we can have probably better TVs or cars or whatever, or access to culture. Nowadays, those gaps are reduced, no, everywhere in the world. There's not so much difference in terms of what a normal person can get in the market, particularly in the digital market. So the incentive to be in London for a Chilean nowadays, well, of course, you still have much more culture, still more alternative, but then you say, well, but in terms of weather, I don't like weather, no? And in terms of possibility of schools, yes, the public system in the UK is a good one, but then there's a lot of complications to get universities that are very expensive for a Chile. So the difference now, it's not so big 25 years later. So now diplomats, it's much more difficult for the decision to decide where to go makes more difficult for them and for the family. Add to that probably 25 years ago, the percentage of women working in a country like Chile was very low. Nowadays, women have an important role in the economy, in the labor market, same as men. So that means our partners, our wives, they don't want to move. And sometimes they have a better job in Chile than what we have. They say, well, if I go to let's say, the United Kingdom, can I work there? Can I develop my career, my personal career? Sometimes no. The answer is no. So I'm not going to spend 5 years on my career suspending or putting on a freezer my career there. I'm going with you to a place. I'm talking about United Kingdom. It's a wonderful country, but imagine if we have to go to a more difficult country where the conditions are harsh, or too far away from Chile. Chile is also is not a developed country, it's a developing country, but that means that we don't have most of the benefits that diplomats for countries like the United Kingdom or European countries they have. For example, we don't have the possibility to go back to our country unless we pay for ourselves, but the government doesn't pay you to go in the middle of your posting back to Chile, not like a home leave or something like that. We only have that for people who are posted in very difficult countries, mainly in Asia and some countries in Central America. So it's not easy to nowadays to take that decision. So adaptation, the capacity to adapt itself, and also of the family to adapt to new culture, new environments, it's very, 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 very important. And finally, I would say another. It's not a condition, no. I think it's another thing to have in mind is that you are a diplomat. His role is, as I said before, no, his role is to be like a satellite dish, no. You are the satellite dish in a country, so everything that you are receiving, you have to transmit it back to capital. So you have to have that capacity to see things beyond what you see. Let's say in the supermarket, you see, I see a lot of bananas, a lot of fruits. But you have to have the capacity to see beyond that. It's April, they are selling, let's say, peaches, Chile produces peaches in April. Are the Chilean peaches, the one that's selling here, is there potential? Then you begin to look at that and say, they are selling peaches, but from Spain, not from Chile. Or why not? So it's this inquisitive mind to look at things where other people don't look at it. They see, there's a bottle of wine there. This is Chilean, and not bad example one because there's a lot of Chilean wine here. But when you're looking for market opportunities or even, I'm talking because again I'm a little contaminated with my trade career. But if you go to seminars, and you get a long list of seminars, you get emails from a lot of institutions at the embassy. Which one are the ones that you are going to go? Let's say I can only go twice a week to a seminar. Which one do you have to go? Then you have to have the capacity to say, I think this issue it's an interesting topic. No, this is something new. There's something growing in interest in the UK on this issue. This may be interesting in Chile. No, so then you get information, do a little bit of analysis, and then you feedback. And you have to feedback to the appropriate people, otherwise it gets into a lot amount of paperwork or communication to Chile, and not to the appropriate person to live with that. For example, cybersecurity. A lot of things going about cybersecurity. That's okay. This is something interesting. It's somebody in Chile doing something on cybersecurity, and if no, should somebody do something on cybersecurity, and who should be doing that in Chile? So then I can feedback what I can read here, or I can go to seminars here, or whether I listen on the radio or watch on TV or in seminar. So that capacity, that open mind to look into things and see behind that and say, well, is there an opportunity for my country to learn about this? Is there a market opportunity for my country? Is there an opportunity for collaboration or cooperation between the country, in this case, the United Kingdom, and Chile on certain matters? And also to discuss things, because a lot of people, institutions come to the embassy to sell things, not sell material, but sell ideas. This is important for Chile. This is something good for the country. We have the experience to do this or to do that. They show things and say, yeah, but then you have to have the capacity to say, well, actually no, because I know that in Chile this is being done, but in a different way. We are using the French system, not the British system, or we are more Americans, or we are not doing anything on that, or we are not interested in that. So it's again, it's this capacity to it's like a private investigator, going around and looking into things and say, well, this could be interesting. And this covers everything. It's sky's the limit there. You can go on and watching it there, the Greenwich is there. What's that? The Cathy Sark, that's the thing that's in Greenwich. The museum culture. Where can I put my culture here? Does it make sense to bring a group of musicians from the southern of Chile to a festival about Celtic music in Northern Ireland? No, it doesn't make any sense. So, but where? So then I have a group of music of Chilean southern music who wants to come here to the UK. You have to look, or you know that somebody is playing in Chile and they are looking for some international places. Well, you have to go and find your place. Again, this covers everything: trade and security. Yeah, you are rushing me, so.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. No, I can speak a lot, but I like these issues also. So let's open for question and answer.
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions. If that's okay.
More than a couple.
There we go. Do you want to stand up? Thank you.
Personal.
Yeah.
Should we go one-on-one or should we?
Do you have any other questions?
No, here was some.
Of this lady here?
I have two, if that's okay. There was one, I was wondering, how do you develop your negotiation skills as a diplomat? And the second one was, it was really interesting hearing you talk about how the role as a diplomat has changed. And I was wondering, would you say it's more of a reactive role? And if you could talk a bit more about sort of public or digital diplomacy, and if you have any thoughts on that.
I forgot about negotiation. That's very important. On the personal life, yeah, well, everybody has his own personal life, and it's part of the challenge of as I was saying, of trying to keep a family together and trying to have a personal life or life outside the office when you are changing places every 5 or 3 years. In my case, what I sense it's nowadays it's a bit more easier, because you have WhatsApp. So, for example, I'm with I will get out of the university. I graduated in 1985, 86, and then I lost contact with all my university classmates. I lost contact because I went to the diplomatic academy, then I went to Washington, and then I moved around the world. So every time when I knew that they were celebrating the 10 years of graduation, 15 years of graduation, but I was never able to attend those meetings. Nowadays we have a group in WhatsApp, so now I know what they're doing, and if they're meeting, they send photos. But in the past it was very difficult. So you begin to lose friends back in Chile. It puts a lot of pressure on families. I'm second time married, so I lost my first wife. I didn't die, but I finished the marriage. because of all this stress puts on this, you know, especially for wives or for partners who are not who have a career and they cannot work. So it's a stress. On the other side, you have the possibility to have friends all over the world, and that's really fantastic. Sometimes saves you money in terms of hotels because you know your friends and they can I stay with you and somewhere crazy place in there. But I personally I've been lucky and I'm very happy with my personal life because of the foreign service. On your two questions, negotiating skills, yes, of course, but that's something very difficult to learn, no, to acquire those skills, no. In my case, I know that now, yes, but in these 25 years, I've never went to any kind of training on negotiating skills. We had some courses, this one of these UN mock things, and when we had diplomatic academy was 2 days exercise, no more than that. But it's clearly something that a lot of foreign services are trying to teach or trying to get into the diplomat. Now, as I was saying, nowadays when everything is instantly feeded into you, the question is how much negotiating skills do you need? No, when I cannot open the mouth because I know that what I have to say will be coming through a WhatsApp, through an email. No? So they say, you have to say Mr. and Mrs. this, blah, 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 blah. That's it. Don't change any word of that. So then you go to a foreign officer, and the conversation is already set. No, it's set by your capital, by your capital, and in the case of foreign officer, it's set by the foreign officer. So there's no much possibility to negotiate. There's a lot of negotiation going around, just little things, but in general, the bigger issues, like in the past, no, and I think that's something that it's missing more and more on diplomats. No, in the past, this ambassador came, diplomat crossing the sea with no communications at all, with unless probably twice a year when they receive a diplomatic pouch. You need a lot of skills in order to sit down and everything that you were doing, you had to negotiate. You didn't know exactly what were your instructions. No, very broad ideas. The second question was about.
So you mentioned about how the role of a diplomat has changed from sort of
more
a
reactive
role and not necessarily informing the public or informing others about sort of foreign affairs, but analysing. And I was just wondering your thoughts on that, as well as sort of the future of diplomacy, of where a lot of governments, even with the Foreign Office, they're basically developing digital diplomacy as one of their main sort of initiatives.
I think as things have evolved, I think that there's still a role for a reactive or active, as I would say, more inquisitive diplomat, no, trying to feedback capital things that are going on, new technologies, new trends, new foods, new trade, new issues on the diplomatic agenda or public policy. I think that there's still an important role on that side. Certainly it is more reactive in the sense that, again, because of instant communications, it's much easier even for the minister. Now, 25 years ago, there was no chance that the minister was contacting you. Nowadays, the minister contacts you directly. I mean, well, of course, the ambassador, because he can feed you immediately. Say, Matthias, you have to go to the foreign office and try to find out this, no, and if not this, please try to do this, no, and we need to change that. So it is in that sense very, very, very reactive to what your capital is saying, also very reactive to what's going on in posting. But I think that the beauty of diplomacy is still this more active, inquisitive aspect. No? You can go around. You have the unique opportunity, especially in countries where you don't have too much contact with or the countries have not much contact with Chile. This is not the case of the United Kingdom, but let's say Uzbekistan or Turkmenistan, those countries where we don't have embassies, but we send sometimes envoys there or ambassadors in one country to go there for 2 or 3 weeks. And that's a very rich opportunity to be very much more active and say, oh, what's going on here? Where can opportunities for cooperation, opportunities to work together, joint project. No? And that's I think that's still the beauty of diplomacy for me. That's something that I do a lot. No? And the fact that I'm here probably it's part of that. No? Say, well, what is this? No? Why are you sitting here? No? What is your interest? And how can I put a little grain of sand in your thinking? And if that helps you to move into diplomacy, perfect. If that helps you to move away from diplomacy, also perfect. No?
Yeah, we'll take one last question for Matthias, if there is one. Yes.
Hi, just leading on from the question about negotiation skills, and you touched upon analytical and adaptability, that's required to be a good diplomat. What else, in your opinion, would you suggest are good quality useful skills to have for this type of role? Your top 3, if you could name.
I think how to know how to express your ideas in a very succinct manner, very short manner. Because nowadays it's and I think that applies to a lot of careers nowadays, where everything is, you have to tweet in 140 characters. You also have to send your reports in a very short manner, in a very precise manner. No? They don't have time enough to read. If you find something interesting in cybersecurity and culture, you don't have time to read a full thesis about what's cybersecurity, directly into the point. And that's also important when you are talking or discussing or negotiating with your counterparts in the country. Now, you have to go directly to the focus. They don't have too much time, and they begin to look at the words and about all the thing about, and you must have read all these discussions about or conversation or debate about the role of dinners nowadays, dinners and formal receptions. And, it's part of diplomatic life, yes, it's part, but it's getting more. The relevance of that is less. People don't want to go on dinners after 7 o'clock in the evening because they want to prepare to be as a family, especially in bigger cities where they want to commute. So you did a lot of diplomacy in dinners where you had time to speak, you had time to talk with the drinks and the food and the after drinks. But not nowadays. No? Nowadays you do a lot of diplomacy at the streets, or the pub, or the telephone, at the email. So you have to be very, very interesting. That would be one. Second one, skills. No, I think working in groups. I mean, that's always important. Particularly small embassies, small missions. Mainly because everything is so integrated. No. Today we are speaking about consular affairs with the Chilean communities. You cannot leave us out human rights because there was a human rights pass in Chile. So the Chilean community is very involved in that. So human rights is part of the Chilean community. Chilean community is also part of trade and human rights, because everything is so interlinked. So you need to work in group at embassies. Everybody has to know what's going on. The relationship of a country. You cannot be very good selling wines and very bad selling whatever or culture. Everything has to go together. So that's why we have to be working very coordinated. And this means work coordinated at the embassy as well as abroad. So you need to work with this kind of group thinking and group working. Probably the last one. Besides adaptability and this inquisitive mind, it's very hard. Language, of course, it's really important. But it's very difficult for small foreign service like ours. If you want to open an embassy in Georgia or in Azerbaijan, to learn the language for a very small, you have to devote somebody to do 1 or 2 years language training and then only dedicated to that. So I know the Americans and big foreign services, they do that. They put the diplomat aside, he or she studies 1 or 2 years the language and then expose it. We don't have the capacity to do that because it's a small foreign service. So that's also a very big challenge for a diplomat.
Okay, thank you, Matthias. The same question actually for the most important skills for diplomats. We asked the same question to ambassadors who were attending our event recently, and you can watch the videos online on our website, which they tell their stories leading to becoming ambassadors, on what are skills, knowledge sets, and their career path. And those are in their words in the website. We can answer. You can see from Ambassador who attended maybe a couple of our last events. So I thank Matthias for his answer and his contribution. I will introduce Lambit Opik, who's a former or ex-MP of Liberal Democrats, and now he's the head of public affairs for an international robotic company.
Thank you very much. You get rid of this machine. Can I just move it? I'll let you do it.
When would you like?
No.
Just now?
No.
Okay.
No, it's not on. Hello everybody. Thank you very much for letting me to come to play. That's going to fall off there now, friend. Yeah, we've got it. There we are. What we'll do is just get to the beginning. No, I know. Just get to the beginning. Give the Deputy Ambassador another round of applause. Very important. Thank you very much. I actually work downstairs on the 10th floor, and I've come upstairs at the request of this fine organisation to share something which I think is really, really important, and that's my point of view. It is the most important point of view I've ever had. Come on, machine. There we are. Let's see if that works now. I'm not worried at all about this. It'll turn up in just a minute, I think. Hand up those of you who have a dream that you know. Don't look at each other, I'm asking you, right. 4 of you, no, about 10 of you have, well, 20 of you have dreams and the rest of you have no ambition. Well, I'm going to, there's the power of the media. I'm going to talk to you about a career in international affairs according to me. Let's start, and I'm the expert on my own point of view. Lembit Opik is a clue that I wasn't brought up in the United Kingdom, but I was. I was brought up in an Estonian community within Northern Ireland, but my parents are both Estonian. They went from Estonia to Northern Ireland, and I asked them, why did you do that? Why did you go to Northern Ireland? And they said something like, well, Lembit, we wanted you to suffer as much as we did. It kind of worked. So I have Estonian as my first language, English as my second, and in a sense, my entire career, my entire life has been a foreign experience. An amazing coincidence, I used to be a member of Parliament, and by an amazing coincidence, my name is an anagram of this phrase. It's absolutely amazing. I like to be MP. What are the odds? It's very cruel in a way, considering I lost my seat in 2010. For that. Also, I killed to be PM. But that's not allowed anymore. I go to Belmarsh, which is just around the corner if I use that one. That's the Estonian flag in the background. I'm going to show you my experience of the idea of international work, and it ties in beautifully with what you have just heard. It's really a continuation of what you've heard. If anyone here been to Estonia, by the way, do you go to the Maritime Museum? That's the Maritime Museum, and there's a submarine called Lembit in it. Lembit, actually. Strange, despite being born in Northern Ireland, people think I'm named after the submarine. It's not that way. It's not the other way around. It's just was a very common name at that time. I went to Bristol University. I spent 13 years as an MP. Somebody who I work with, called John, said it's nice to have sensible people like you on the team. He doesn't know me very well because I'm a maverick. Definition of a maverick: an unbranded calf or yearling, an unorthodox or independent-minded person. It comes from a man called S.A. Maverick, who died in 1870. He was a Texas rancher. He noticed because people were greedy, everyone was branding their calves. So he said, I won't brand mine, and then any unbranded calf belongs to me. That's maverick thinking. Lesson 1, to do what you may want to do, you don't have to be a maverick. But to be the best at what you might be considering, the kind of service that we're describing, to be a world changer, you have to be a maverick. That's my motorbike. I suppose lots of motorcyclists are mavericks. Any motorcyclists here? There's 2 at the back. That's statistically average, actually. It's about 2% of the population. When did you last fall off? In Kazakhstan, did you say? I prefer my answer, but thanks anyway. A biker said to me, how do you cope with all the stress and chaos in your life? I said, well, you've never been a Liberal Democrat, have you, in that case? I've had lots of stress and chaos in my life. But what it's taught me is this. Second lesson about, hopefully, the big world, big step you want to take in your life. You need 3 things for your agenda. 1, vision, your telos, your story, your narrative. The thing that defines your future, not just your past. Number 2, your values, the morals, the moral code that drives you, without which it's absolutely pointless to have a diplomatic career, because you are standing as a representative of an entire value structure in terms of what you're doing. And number 3, your vavavum, your commitment. Because even if you've got a story in your morals, if you haven't got the energy to see that through, then just give up now. Go and do an ordinary job in an ordinary life, and it's perfectly acceptable to do it. But don't pretend you're going to make a global difference, and don't pretend you'll get to the top in an international world. That goes for politics, for the diplomatic corps, and also in industry. This is my life. It's meetings. That's Andrew Jones, one of the ministers in the Department for Transport. The lady in the middle there, with her eyes blanked out for anonymity, is actually really unhappy because he was listening to me rather than to her. It was a glorious day. This is also my life. They were trying to stop motorcycles from going across the Forth Road Bridge. I do a lot of public affairs work for the motorcycle world. We met in another meeting in Scotland. It's hardly international affairs, but another meeting, and we got that policy changed, and that's helped about 14,000 people. In a sense, being abroad, that would have been a typical international policy resolution. This is also my life. This is actually GCHQ trying to get close to me in disguise. No one noticed who it was. That's the motorcycle world. So I live in different worlds. Third lesson, in international life, just as you heard, you have to be different roles, but always the same person. What factors got me here? And these relate to me more than to you, certainly the last one. About 50% of my achievement is probably thanks to my education. I was blessed with a great education in Northern Ireland. 25% was circumstances, where I was born and the chances I had from going to Bristol University and so on. 15% of it was luck, and 10% of it was stupidity. Now, the stupidity is really important, because you have to be stupid enough to believe that you're better than other people to get to where you're going. I've got a pilot's license. Would I give myself a pilot's license if I was the authorities? Of course not. But they don't know me. So I've got a pilot's license. If you are going to be in the diplomatic corps or in an international job in the private sector, you have to be, well, really brash enough to lead a team without them being afraid of being led by you. Really, really important. I get scared sometimes, but I don't tell anybody about it. Well, I just have. I've told you all. But you've got to be able to handle that, especially when you're in the front line. Now, I lost my seat in Parliament. Does anyone here watch Have I Got News For You? A satirical television show in the United Kingdom. They have an odd one out theme, and I lost my seat in 2010. I didn't mean to. Probably did the right thing for me, even though it wasn't planned. Let's see if you can guess which is the odd one out here. Lembit Opik as an MP, the Titanic, the dinosaurs, or Nostradamus. Which of them is the odd one out?
And who are you in this group?
Lembit Opik. Try and keep home. I know where you live. Sorry, that's Northern Ireland politics again. It's obviously up there. The odd one out was Nostradamus, because he saw it coming. Thank you very much. Pearls to swine. So anyway, I took a tumble there, but the message here is you have to be able to accept when you're playing in the major league, and I suppose you all want to, you've self-selected yourselves to be here, and all of you watching as well, then you have to be able to accept that sometimes you lose big as well. That doesn't mean you give up on your dreams and Good for you if you raised your hands that you've got a dream. I beg you all to do the same. Have dreams. That was a dream of somebody for the way the embankment would look when they made some road signs. But keep hold of reality. That's what it's turned out as. So have the dreams, but be willing to hold on to reality. You must do that. Now, most of life isn't glamorous. That's the kind of way that I operate. But some of it is fantastic. That's the Estonian ambassador to the United Kingdom, and that's me with the former Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons here in the UK, and a very important business person called Kristen Kape in Tallinn, in front of a building called Õpikumaja, named after my grandfather, not after me. And one of my jobs is to get that building filled up by business people from the United Kingdom. And all of those skills I've talked about, having a narrative, having values, and crucially, having the energy to carry that out are essential, and they will be for you as well. That's what it looks like. That's Õpikumaja, nearly finished, and they'll build the second one. And I suppose in a way it's glamorous, even if most of what all of you are going to do in your whole life isn't going to be very glamorous. There are those moments, glorious moments of high achievement. You also can meet some very interesting people. This might not be the most popular person with an international community, but it's Nigel Farage, and he is actually a good friend of mine, and we obviously go to the same tailor. But there are those high point moments. In international politics, it doesn't always go right. George Brown, he was the foreign minister, and there is a story that is told about him which is untrue, but it's so good I will tell it to you. George Brown liked to drink. He liked a drink a lot. And ultimately it killed him, in fact. But there's a story that on one occasion he was really drunk in Lima, and the music started. He was in the embassy. He staggered across to someone beautifully dressed, and he said, "Madam, would you like a dance?" And the person said, "No, for 3 reasons, George. First of all, you're obviously drunk. Secondly, this is actually the national anthem here in Lima. And thirdly, I'm the Archbishop of Lima." It's not true, but it's a good story. What I'm working on now, and it's probably the most interesting international project I have ever been involved in, is that. It's Starship. It's a robot that will bring you your shopping to your door, and it's been tested around here. We'd like to see it in action. It's remote control. In fact, it's automatic. Might just be coming in right now. There's the Starship. The drones in the sky, that's just dreamland. This is real. And if you live around Greenwich, you see it coming around all the time. Are you good enough to get it down the middle there? Okay, that's where it's going to stay. You can have a look at it a little bit later on as well. Are you able to run it down the side there, Alex? That is autonomous. At the moment it's being controlled because we haven't mapped the room, but it's autonomous and it will bring you your shopping. That is an international effort. It's been built and invented by, as you heard, Ahti Heinla. He is one of the inventors of Skype. That's what you can do when you work in an international environment. It's also growing so fast. We've had we've expanded from me doing 1.5 days a week last summer to expanding to a room of 10 and then 20. So when you are working internationally, it's very exciting. What's the road ahead for you? Well, you can. All right. That's enough. Thank you very much. No, sorry. The road ahead for you. You can do this. Or press some button there, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't make any difference from here. You can do that. You can spend your time like Easy Rider going through the world. Or alternatively, you can take action. And I'm asking you, in conclusion pretty much, what will you do to employ your brilliance? And what's your next step today? Don't just say, that was interesting. Make one promise to yourself today to make a difference. Now, Albert Einstein said something really interesting. He said the intuitive mind, I'll put it up there, is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We have created a society that honours the servant and has forgotten the mind. I think intuition is really important in an international role. I suppose my job is empowerment of you. I'm wondering what your purpose is. I've been a politician. I suppose I've been a celebrity in my own way as well. But who would you rather meet? The reality is, you can have both, and you can have a personal life, if you try hard enough, or you can have many personal lives, indeed. And I envy you because at least you got married. I've never got quite that far. I've always enjoyed being engaged more than the people I was engaged to. And Churchill said this: "What is the use of living, if it be not to strive for noble causes and to make this muddled world a better place for those who will live in it after we are gone?" Now that is at the heart of international politics, diplomacy and business. What are you going to do to make the world better? I'm so blessed in the work that I do. I love working with the robot guys, and I absolutely feel privileged to have, I suppose, an international political career. I spent a lot of time doing that. I was Shadow Secretary of State for Northern Ireland and helped to broker the peace process there, and an international business career. You can do it all, but you have to have those three things. You have to have a telos, that story. You have to have some values to guide you, and you have to have the energy to do those things. You do those three things, and then you can't go far wrong. I'm David Opick. I'm here to help.
Before a couple of questions, anyone who has any question, just introduce yourself. We start from.
Hi Lambert, my name's Chris. When you lost your seat in 2010, it was a surprise pretty much to everybody, and certainly I'm sure to you. How quickly did you
Yes, not good.
lose that feeling of, shit, what do I do next? And go on to your next drink?
My next drink. You obviously know me quite well then. Right. I really didn't see my defeat coming. I didn't see that. Nor did the person who beat me, who was probably as disappointed as me. But the reality, there's only one thing you can do in a situation like that. You accept the circumstances gracefully. Now, I lost my seat, but that, my friends, is democracy. I could get fired if I go downstairs and I do a good bad job there. That's life. So of the two bits of advice I give in response to your question, Chris, the first one is accept with good grace the things that go wrong, because they'll teach you more about yourself, and probably the meaning of life is the journey itself more than any one thing. We know the destination, so the journey must be the reason. And secondly, it's back to that point about narrative telos. I wasn't born to be an MP. I think my telos is empowerment. My telos is to make your careers better, your outlook better, maybe just your life better. Maybe this just helps you think, I really want to work out who and what I am. And then I've been successful. And so if I hadn't had a telos, then I would maybe have gone off the rails. And it was difficult, I'm not going to lie. I had 2 very difficult years and was pretty much insolvent. But I always knew what I stood for. I've got a strong personal faith as well. And so I suppose that pulled me through. But those 2 things, accept the bad times in good grace and say, what can I learn from them? And secondly, always remind yourself what your narrative is. Like Gandhi had a narrative, Nelson Mandela found his narrative through difficulty. I am sure Obama has a narrative. The greatest deliverers in the kind of work that you're doing is those people have a narrative. On the other hand, if your ambition is to get famous through X Factor, you don't need a narrative. Do it like. Just be nice to Simon Cowell. Who's next?
Hi, I'm Nick. I work for the European Council on Foreign Relations. How and why did you go into robotics, and what exactly is your role in your company? I'm also asking because I'm working on drones, more military than commercial, but I'm really interested in what exactly you're doing.
I can't tell you. You'll get the ideas, and then you'll turn my robot into some killing machine. I will answer your question. My father was a computer programmer in the 1950s. So he was there just after the start of big mainframe computers. I grew up with something called Fortran statements, which were how you used to have to program computers. So since before I was born, computer technology was in my family. My grandfather was an astronomer, so I've always been interested in science. In about 2008, I convinced the British government that Segways, if you know those 2-wheel things, were legal in the UK. I got them legalised. not in the letter of the law, but by precedent. So when Starship, the guys who I've just shown you, when they were looking for somebody in the UK, then they came to the opinion that I already had some experience on how to do it, and so they asked me if I could help do for Starship what I had achieved for Segway, and I said I'd love to do it. Initially the job was small, but it got bigger and bigger. So I've ended up doing this job as a result of doing the things I've described: investment, energy. It was meant to be 1.5 days a week, and I'm here every day now. In terms of the purpose of it, it's entirely peaceful. It's designed to take the boring jobs that you don't want to do away from your life so that you can focus, if you want to, on the interesting things. Secondly, it has an enormously important social opportunity. There are hundreds of thousands of people in the UK who could live at home if they could just keep their independence. This can do the shopping for people like my mum, who's got a heart condition and can't walk far, but can look after herself in her house. So that's why, and it just happened to be an Estonian invention. If it had come from Bolivia or Chile, then I probably wouldn't have been asked. But they knew of me because I'd done a lot of work, political work in the independence movement in Estonia when it was becoming independent from the former Soviet Union. And I'd done a lot of work with Segway, and that's how it happened. But it was a bit of luck and circumstance as well. How did you end up killing, how did you end up in the military? Don't answer that question now. I know that look. And this is a very vulnerable position for a drone strike.
Yes.
Microphone. You urge us to don't give up your dreams, but I have a question. If you had at any point of your life some kind of doubt, like what the hell am I doing here?
Have I ever had at any point in my life the doubt, what am I doing here? I have it now. No, I don't have it now in here. I had doubts about, it's funny, the answer is to your question, yes, professionally and personally. The professional doubt I have sometimes had, for example, when I was given responsibility for 300 people, when I was working for Procter & Gamble in human resources, I had the doubt about whether I could, at the age of 29, know enough about life to look after the welfare of 300 people. That made me doubt. I was given a job to be the Global Human Resources Training Manager, another international role I had, very important to what I do now. And I was responsible in Procter & Gamble for the training of about 112,000 people. And just sometimes I thought, am I faking this? But I did it anyway, and I'm glad, because sometimes you have to feel the fear and do it anyway. My biggest regret is my doubt about marrying somebody, the opposite in a way of what you did. My biggest regret was doubting about marrying somebody in the 1990s, so I should have married her, and I always regretted that. So I acted on the doubt, and I made the wrong call. Lesson for you, sir: feel the fear, but do it anyway. Have the doubts, but follow your heart, professionally and personally. There's somebody at the back there, I think. There's a person at the back there, that's the last one, I think.
Hi, I want to know if you could briefly describe your career path from graduate university.
No, just have to repeat that, didn't you?
Oh, sorry. You can describe your career path from when you graduated university until when you became an MP.
Absolutely, yeah, okay, that's fine. Look how frightened you all got because I came out of my comfort zone into yours. I come in peace. She's the one you need to be afraid of. My career path from leaving university to what, the present day? Okay. Okay, we've got about 2 hours then. Here's the 2-minute version. I went to Bristol University. I started off, there's a little bit at university that's relevant. Bristol University, I started off in aeronautical engineering. I love flying, still do it. Even set up an air taxi company for about 6 years. It was quite successful. I love flying, but I didn't want to study it, I realized. Did economics for a year before I realized that was a pseudoscience rather than a social science, and moved into philosophy, which doesn't pretend to be anything other than thinking. And it's a great subject. I loved that. Then after that, I did some politics in student world. Then I joined Procter & Gamble, first in the advertising department, selling Fairy Liquid. And I would say, statistically speaking, that over half of you have a household that uses Fairy Liquid. Raise your hands if you know whether your household uses Fairy Liquid. There we are. That's how good I was. A lot better than I was in the Liberal Democrat, obviously. So I worked in Fairy Liquid, then worked in some other brands, realised that marketing was brilliantly interesting but not important to me. So I asked for a transfer to personnel, that's human resources, which was regarded as the graveyard in the organisation. So when it was announced, and Lembit here is moving from advertising to human resources, everyone went, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear your news." No, I asked for the move. Of course you did, Lembit. Yeah, sure. So then I found my home, and my home was empowerment. So I designed training, went around the world, did something called OE, Organisational Effectiveness, and then got involved in politics at a local level up in the north of England. And I got really persuaded to stand for Parliament in 1997. It wasn't in my game plan to stand in a winnable seat, but I did win, and I spent 13 years as an MP. I did other things too, but that was the main thing. 2010 I lost my seat, and there were various reasons for that, part of which were my own responsibility. And then I drifted for 2 years, did bits and pieces, worked a bit with Segway, but I was searching. And I kind of lost my telos a bit, if I'm honest, Chris. I didn't remember what it was about. 2012 I remembered what I was about, and I started working for free for organisations I believed in. Then the Motorcycle Action Group came along, that's the bikers lot, and they gave me the role of Director of Communications and Public Affairs. They have 67,000 members, big job. And then I realised that I could do a couple of other things as well. And so I joined the BBC, and I have 2 programmes on BBC Radio Kent on Fridays and Sundays, and then the robot job came along as well. But you know, if you put it all together, it's all logical, it all follows. I couldn't predict it, but it's obvious when I look back, because the robot job is all about the Segway and the corporate stuff I did in Procter & Gamble. The public affairs work is all about what I did in politics. And all of it is about people. Because everything I do, even with the robot, it's about getting the public to see it our way. So the simple one-sentence answer is, since leaving university, I've tried to empower other people. And incidentally in the process, I suppose, from time to time, I've empowered myself. If there's one last question, then I think we better wrap up to keep up the time. There's a great phrase, well, I'm happy to stick around for a little while and talk privately. There's a great phrase which somebody said to me, my sister in fact said to me, that I think it came originally from the Dalai Lama. Well, he said something else as well. One is, life is tough. And one time I was complaining to my friend David Hamer, sadly not with us anymore, about how terrible my personal life was. And I said, David, what do you think? He said, well, in the words of the Dalai Lama, suffering is unavoidable, but misery, that's a choice. And I felt ashamed, because I realised I was choosing to be miserable in what is in a life that so many people from anywhere in the world would give anything to have. And I felt ashamed. And the second one, and I'll finish on this one, is that you have to embrace the uncertainty, the doubt that you're asking me about, and just go for it sometimes. Because the greatest achievements are done in that way. I was talking to Gene Cernan, he was the last man to walk on the moon. I was very blessed to meet him last year. And he said, yeah, we were afraid. We knew we mightn't come back, but we did it. And I walked on the moon. And only 12 people, 12 humans in history have done that. He was afraid. And then the other thing, that bit of luck, a great phrase, and this is my sister's phrase, just go forward and laugh when it goes wrong, because the way to, how do you make God laugh? Do you know? The way to make God laugh is to tell him your plans. And I would say, make your plans, be willing to have them changed or change them, but just recognise that every single one of us in this room has a blessed opportunity to have a great life. Damn well make the most of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lambert, and please join me also to thank Matthias and for these 2. And we will move now directly to the next session on career path and the work delivered by think tanks.
She just broke my drone. I think it's vice versa.
You can blow it up.
Really?
Stay for about 5 minutes and then I gotta go. But
Do you want to start by the way? Or
We've got your thing up, so I don't have PowerPoint, so.
Alright. Well, as you can see, it's not particularly elaborate.
It's more elaborate.
Right, are we starting right away? It's really a pity I'm not here to talk about drones, because then I could have brought mine and raced the Starship, and that would have been so much fun. But no, I'm actually here to talk about the European Council on Foreign Relations. My name is Ulrike Franke, and I work at the European Council on Foreign Relations, or ECFR. I've been there for almost exactly 1 year. I work directly with the director and founder of ECFR, Mark Leonard. And the reason I'm here really is because, you know, we got this request, and it came to me because someone said, this is youth outreach, so we need someone young to do this. So, you know, that's how I ended up here. I'll quickly explain what ECFR is, because in a way we're somewhat of an untypical think tank, if you like. So rather than being national, we are pan-European, and that means that we've got 7 offices all over Europe, so in 7 national capitals: London, Berlin, Madrid, Paris, Rome, Sofia, and Warsaw. And it was originally founded that way, so that was always the idea. You may see that we do not have an office in Brussels. We actually got 1 person sitting in Brussels all by himself. But that was a conscious choice, because we're not a think tank of the European Union. We are a think tank working on European foreign policy. And European foreign policy is still very much done in member states and then kind of coordinated on the European level. So that was a conscious choice we made. The London office, where I am based, is the largest office. It's also where the back office is, so HR and all of these things. And in London, we've got about 20 researchers, and in total, we've got about 60. The reason why I can't actually, you know, say the exact number is because there are very different ways of working in a think tank. I don't think that that's anything specific to ECFR, but that's the think tank world in general. So there are people that are researchers full-time. There are researchers that are part-time. I'm actually finishing a PhD on the side, so I'm not working full-time either. There are associate researchers. There are researchers that aren't really based at the office. One of my colleagues is supposedly in a London office. She actually lives in southern France and comes in every other month or so. So there are very flexible ways, and that's something I wanted to kind of tell you about, because that's interesting when it comes to the think tank world. Now, what do we do? I mentioned we work on European foreign policy, and we really got 2 approaches into this. So on the one hand, there are the national offices, as I mentioned, 7 offices all over Europe. And what these offices provide is really the regional expertise, or the national expertise. So whenever something is happening in, let's say, Bulgaria, we've got someone who can explain what this means, can explain where it comes from, and can explain how it may influence Bulgaria's view on European foreign policy. And one of the things, for instance, that we do is called Views from the Capital. And that's on the website. Whenever something is happening, we ask all the heads of offices, what does your country think about this? The last one we did, which I really liked, was on the Brussels terrorist attacks. And that was great, because you got, you know, the London office saying, oh, this actually influences the Brexit debate quite a lot. And you got the Sofia office saying, well, this actually negatively influences the way Bulgaria looks at the refugee crisis. And you got Rome saying, we need more European integration to face these threats. So it's quite interesting to see how the same event can have very different impacts on different European member states. So that's the national offices, and that's very helpful to have this view, but we also have programs, thematical regional programs. And at the moment there are 4. The first one is the Asia and China program. most of our researchers there are based in Paris. The wider Europe program, which is mainly Eastern Europe, and the researchers are based in London, Sofia, Warsaw, Berlin, predominantly. MENA, Middle East, North Africa, again mainly London, but not, well, let's say predominantly London. And European Power, which basically brings together everything, all the kind of foreign policy tools the European Union and the European member states have, and that's again mainly in London. So these regional programs or thematical programs give us expertise on specific issues. So there you've got people who can explain why Syria is such a mess, for instance, and what would be a good policy recommendation for the EU on Libya. Now, what kind of work do we do? I'm just going to run quickly through these also because it's somewhat typical of a think tank, I would say. First of all, there are of course the publications, and we do very different things. We've got essays, policy papers, policy briefs, recommendations. We got a few books. The Why Europe Will Run the 21st Century is a book my boss wrote. Connectivity Wars is an edited volume that just came out at the end of last year, in which I was involved in quite a lot, so that was good fun. And there is what I would call our flagship publication, which is the European Foreign Policy Scorecard. And I don't know whether you're familiar with this, but we publish this every year. And what we do in this, we look at different foreign policy initiatives at the European level. And then we look at how well countries did on that, what role they played. And we designate countries as either leaders or slackers when it comes to foreign policy issues. And it's always good fun because when it comes out, of course, in member states that are designated as slackers, they usually don't like it too much. And when you go to member states that are considered leaders, they're usually quite happy with the publications. That's kind of the fun one for us to do. So that's the publications bit. We do lots of events. That was the launch of Connectivity Wars in Berlin. We do Black Coffee mornings in the London office quite often. So if you're interested in foreign policy, European foreign policy, you may want to have a look at the website and see what kind of events we're doing. Could be interesting for you. Of course, there's the website. So as you can see on top, we've got the different national offices, and then here in the middle, you've got the different regional programs, so you can see what they do. We do a lot of smaller blog posts and things like that on the website. So again, it could be a good resource if you're researching a particular topic. Media engagement is quite important when you're in a think tank, and I'll say something about this in a second, but our researchers are usually in the media quite a lot, write articles, appear on TV or even on radio or whatever, which is always fun. I really like this. The podcast, again, something I very much recommend also because I got my hands on that quite a lot. We do a weekly podcast that's called The World in 30 Minutes, and it has our director, Mark Leonard, discuss current events, quite broadly, current events and what it means for European foreign policy with 2 to 4 researchers or knowledgeable people, really. And I quite enjoy doing these and listening to them. So, and in general, by the way, I would very much recommend for you to listen to foreign policy podcasts and these things if you're interested in that, because there are good ones out there. And I'm happy to give a few more tips once I'm not here presenting ECFR anymore. So afterwards. And then last, and maybe most importantly for us, engagement with policymakers. This is our annual council meeting where we talk to foreign ministers, former prime ministers, people who work in the European Parliament, these kind of people, and give them advice, tell them what we do, recommend policies, these kind of things. And for us, that's really our main target audience. So we are a think tank that doesn't work so much for the general public, even though everything we do is online and can be accessed by everyone, but we're really trying to influence European foreign policy. Right. If you're interested in working for either ECFR or think tanks in general, if that's something that's interesting for you, I wanted to share a few kind of tips with you. And of course, as usual in our fields, there's not one path into it. There really is never for anything. But there are a few things that really help. And one, of course, is a good education and a good expertise in certain things. So just to kind of give you a general idea, I did an undergrad at Sciences Po in France and the University of St. Andrews, and then went on to do my master's at Sciences Po again in St. Gallen in Switzerland, and I'm now doing my PhD, hopefully finishing by the end of this year at Oxford University in International Relations. And it's kind of good, you know, if through your education you're already able to find your niche, to get your expertise. Also, once you've found your field, know the other people who are working in there, so have a good network. These are all really crucial things. From my background, you can already see that there's another thing that's kind of important if you want to work in this field, and that's languages. So I speak 3 languages, and honestly, there are much more people at ECFR that speak more languages than I do than that speak less. So that's quite striking. And it's always a good idea to speak languages if we want to do anything international. And yes, English is the lingua franca, but still, it really helps. And we always have issues when we have people that only speak English. Right. Third point, special skills can be super helpful. What I mean by that is usually when we recruit interns, researchers, etc., it really helps if the person can say, so okay, I've got this niche, I really know what I'm talking about, I know the people, but I'm also really good at X. And X can be many things, really. It can be, oh, I've designed my own website, or I'm super good at using data and putting them in nice graphs, things like that. There's not one thing that we're necessarily looking for, but it always helps if you're able to do something that others haven't done. And you can get these kind of skills through, you know, hobbies or things you do anyway. I'm not telling you, you know, go and do this class on data management if you're not interested. But just think about what you can bring to the table that others don't. Fourth, an ability to engage, ability and willingness really to engage with the media. And I'm just mentioning that then if you feel uncomfortable, you know, appearing in the media, if you feel uncomfortable speaking in front of a lot of people, then you may have a problem in think tanks, because that really is part of your job, and we get a lot of media requests. So, you know, it's not impossible to say no, of course, but it's just something that you may want to keep in mind. And last, but maybe most importantly, initiative. What I mean by that, in a think tank, if you're on the kind of researcher policy side, it's quite rare that someone is going to tell you exactly what to do. I mean, of course, you probably start in a program, you're going to have someone telling you that's the report we're working on, etc. But usually it's kind of up to you to find your own niche, to come up with a new great proposal, to come up with, you know, saying we need to publish a report on X. It's even better if you're able to go out there and get funding for yourself. That depends on the think tank, but you know, usually it's quite good if you're able to do that. You don't necessarily have to, but so, you know, your own initiative, knowing what you want to do and come up with your own proposals, super important. And if you're uncomfortable doing that, if you kind of like having someone to tell you what to do, which is fair enough, then maybe think tank may not be the greatest environment. Right, so that already brings me to my end. Just in general, I think think tanks, and of course ECFR in particular, are really interesting, very inspiring, very flexible work environments. It can be a great job. Again, flexibility can be really great, especially when you get older and have families, etc., etc. So there are usually ways to make, you know, your life easier in that kind of environment. But again, in order to do that, you need to have your own initiative. You need to know what you want to do, find your own path. So, you know, just get in touch, really. I put my email address out there. They're also, you know, they're all on our website. I also put our web address on there. And really, I mean, get in touch if you're interested in kind of, you know, working for us or hearing more about all these things. And also let us know if you got great ideas. I mean, that may sound a bit absurd, but you know, if you feel like this is the one thing in European foreign policy we really should be talking about, and I've got this idea, you know, drop us an email. You've got nothing to lose, really. And sometimes we get great, you know, emails, and we actually get back to people and say, well, let's talk about this. So, you know, definitely do. I've also got a few business cards, but really email is the best way to contact me or anyone else at ECFR anyway. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello everyone. I don't have a PowerPoint. Get rid of this somehow. Oh, okay. I'm Rory Canal. I'm the manager of the US and the Americas program at Chatham House. I've been there for about 4 years. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about what is a think tank, how to get in, different ways if you're interested in working in that area. And then finally, the pros and the cons of working in a think tank. And I think Lachlan have actually touched on a lot of what I was going to say already, so I can go through relatively quickly and give you guys plenty of time for lunch.
First of all, just to say a little bit about think tanks, because it is a bit confusing. There isn't really a clear definition of what we are. You have think tanks that can literally be a guy sitting in an office campaigning for badger rights and writing papers on how ex-council's local policy doesn't work, to think tanks like Chatham House, which I work for, which have over 160 full-time staff. In the United States, you have even bigger think tanks, some with staffs of over 200, 300. Some think tanks are very partisan. They might focus on one political party and be very much in line with them. Others, like my own, are independent, non-partisan. There's kind of a variety of them. It gets confusing as well because we influence government policy, but we're not policy makers. We're full of academics. We produce academic type papers, but we're not academic institutions. We don't have students. We do endless media commentary, but we're not journalists. We kind of sit in between all of those worlds. We're a little bit of all of them, but we're none of them. And with that, I'd like to talk just a little bit about Chatham House. So we are a non-partisan think tank, as I said. We're independent. We very much don't take institutional positions. So anything I say today is my opinion and not necessarily Chatham House's opinion. In fact, quite often what is refreshing, we often disagree with each other. About a year ago, we had two different staff write different pieces, arguing, one saying that the West should arm the Ukrainian rebels, and the other saying the opposite. And we kind of published them both at the same time and said, you know, make your own mind up, we're just putting out the opinions. So there's lots of different types of think tanks. And they are generally great places to work, so I do recommend looking at them if you're early stages of your career, or if you've had a bit more time and you have some experience to bring to the field. Getting into think tanks can be quite difficult. It's a very small world. As I mentioned, we have about 160 staff, and we're probably the biggest think tank in London. Most think tanks have less than 100 employees. Just to give you an idea of Chatham House, 160 staff. Probably less than half are sort of working on research. With people doing everything from security and catering to maintenance to, all those sorts of functions. Then you have around half the staff on research functions. Even those who are on research might be spending a lot of their time, like myself, fundraising, going out and meeting different stakeholders on a project. A lot of time goes into doing things, which will lead on to some of the cons, which I'll talk about later on. There's loads of different ways to get into a think tank. If you've just come out of university, or you're still studying or doing a master's or something like that, there's internships which are unpaid, and I realise that is quite a frustrating way if you don't have the means to live in London or to take a lot of time to work for free, essentially. There's also sort of entry-level jobs, quite difficult, and you'll have maybe 300 people applying for them, but they're worth keeping an eye out for if you've got a little bit of experience or relatively soon out of university. You also have sort of mid-level to senior roles. Now you might be thinking, well, I'd like to do that mid-level to senior role, but I'm only just finished my degree or about to. The one slightly frustrating thing in think tanks, and it's not true for all of them, I don't know if this is true for ECFR, but certainly in my experience, is there's not a simple progression of, okay, I'm going to go and start at the bottom and kind of work my way to the top. What most think tanks value is people who have experience of loads of different institutions and places, because we need a network. We need you to have different types of ideas, different types of exposure. So you can't necessarily start as an intern and then one day you're running the place, as much as I wish that was true. In fact, in some ways it can be good to come into a think tank after you've maybe spent 10 years in academia or in government or another sort of area, because you begin at a different time and you'll have a bit more autonomy and a bit more expertise to bring to the table. In terms of knowledge, and we kind of touched on this before, but there's broadly speaking 3 different sort of knowledge sets that you might have. The one is being a specialist, the badger expert, or if you're like me, I've spent a lot of time looking at the United States. I've spent a bit of time working in the United States Congress. I did a master's focusing on US foreign policy and the Central Intelligence Agency, things like that kind of led me to where I am now. You also might not have necessarily a knowledge specialism, like America, China, whatever. You might have a skill set which is really useful. This can be, maybe you're great at doing editorial. Maybe some of you right now are editing a journal at your university or doing something like that. You might be great at sort of corporate relations or event organising or things like that. So there's those kind of skills which, as I think was mentioned, which you might build up in a hobby or another job, which are quite useful to bring to it. Finally, and I think if you were kind of like me a few years ago, you're probably panicking. How many people maybe think you're a generalist at heart? Anyone put that up? Now, the worrying thing about think tanks is they're all very specialised, and you've got this skill set and that skill set, and you might think, well, I just like international affairs, I like to look at all this sorts of stuff. Don't worry, you can still be a generalist and kind of find your way later on. Particularly if you're at the early stages, you don't have to think, right, I'm interested in the economic policy of Belarus and how it affects EU integration in the long term. You don't actually have to have that right now, but it's useful to develop in the long run. In terms of what we look for, and I do some of the hiring, for interns, for people below me, like our administrator and some of the fellows we hire, but it kind of applies, I think, across most think tanks. At Chatham House, we in particular pride people who can kind of juggle different things. So someone who in the past has studied and done a good degree, but also been captain of the hockey team and did something interesting in volunteering life later. The reason why we kind of value those kind of people is because what we do all the time is juggling all sorts of different things. I mean, today I'm helping the final stage of a research paper which I've co-written. We're kind of getting through the final bits. We're looking at making a short video on a project we did about 6 months ago, kind of explaining that. We have to kind of conceptualize how we fit in 10,000 words of text into 60 seconds of a video. All sorts of different challenges that we're juggling on one day. Fundraising ability is very useful in almost every think tank that you go to, and even if you're coming at the very senior levels. The simple fact is, as we live in that weird world where we're not quite journalists, we're not quite academics, we're not quite government, we don't get taxes, we don't get student fees, we don't get people buying our newspaper, so we have to raise money all the time. We go to governments, we go to different foundations, individuals, corporates, and it is endless fundraising because we don't just have this huge pot of money sitting there that gives us the ability to do what we want all day. So if you've got that kind of skills, it might be charity fundraising, it might be another institution doing different things, it's quite a useful thing to have. The one thing that's almost crucial for most roles is kind of a passion for what you'll be doing. What we do is hard work. It's not always glamorous, it's not always the best paid, so people who actually really care about it, who really bring that to the table, are vital for the organisation and what we run on. And an interest in the topic almost goes without saying, but you've really got to enjoy your topic, otherwise you're going to be spending hours and hours working on it and not really enjoying it in the long run. There's also, quite often I have this case where we'll interview someone for a position and we'll ask for an example of something. And they'll say, oh, well, I did this when I was bartending or when I was working at a cafe. And we're like, well, you didn't put that on your CV. And they'll say, oh, well, I didn't want to put it on. I wanted to appear really smart. And we said, no, don't put all that on. We value people with life skills who can talk to a president and then at the same time go and talk to someone who's just coming off the street and wants to know the directions to the tube or something. I worked in the past, when I was at university, I spent some of my summers working for a pest control company. It was great fun, really well paid actually. If any of you still studying, look into it. And of course, I think it's already been said, but an academic ability, having done that degree, having shown that you can write and study at that level is really useful and kind of the starting point for any kind of job that you later on be doing. Now on to kind of the pros and cons. I think I've done a lot of career talks on think tanks. I've been working in think tanks for 4 years. This doesn't get said enough, and I don't want to put you off too much, but there are a lot of cons. I'll start off with them before we get onto the pros, because as I kind of mentioned, think tank roles often aren't brilliantly paid. There's not this kind of, it can appear quite glamorous, like I got to see President Obama in the flesh on Saturday and that was pretty exciting for me, but it's not all that glamorous. There's loads and loads of works that go into it which isn't as exciting. It's hard work. As I mentioned before, there's sometimes a lack of progression from the kind of junior levels to the mid levels and so on. It can be a bit of, you can have to move around. It's a very small world, there's very few opportunities going. My honest advice is definitely if this is something you really want to do, then go for it, but don't make this your plan A, B, C, D. Have this as plan A and have B and C very well prepared. I have friends who went into accountancy or law after they finished their degrees, and they were in a cohort in their single company of 200 or 300 people just in that year graduate scheme. We don't even have a graduate scheme. We maybe hire 5 or 6 people at the sort of that level each year into kind of interesting roles that people might like. So and we're a big think tank in comparison to others. But there are a lot of pros. It's a great place to work in terms of the people you get to meet, in terms of the work you get to be involved in, just being in the room and seeing some of these policymakers speak behind closed doors. How many people have heard of the Chatham House rule? Should have asked that at the beginning. There we go, okay. Who thinks they can actually explain what it means? Come on. You're cheating. Really. Go for it, sir.
I was actually at a talk at Chatham House a few weeks ago, so I remember. It's the rule that when you're in a meeting
on the Chatham House rule, neither the speakers identity nor what they say can be told to outside of the forwards.
Yeah.
So what happens if Vegas stays in Vegas?
Yes, almost there, and I don't know if you can hear that at the back, but what you said is right, which is that you can't reveal the identity of the speaker or the meeting. The key thing is that, but you can say the idea that they said. So, just to give you an example, we could have a policymaker come in and say, you know, this is what I think, this, and this, and I think this policy won't work for this reason. And you can say, I heard this happen, but it's said under the Chatham House rule. Now, the reason why this is really useful is because a government policymaker might disagree with something that their government is doing, or they could be a politician or a general, but they can't come out and say it. They kind of want to get it out there, they kind of want to talk about the policy, but it's very hard to find a venue where they can talk to people. And what something like the Chatham House rule does is it gives them a venue where they can actually talk and feel comfortable enough to, you know, with the people around them. And that's one of the great things about think tanks, I probably should have mentioned it earlier, is the convening power. One of our crucial strengths is the ability to get people from the media, government, politics, private sector, charity, other parts of academia together in one room. And it looks a lot actually like a seminar which you do in your average undergraduate or master's course. People just have different ideas, they come together, they discuss them, people feel like they've learned something from the room. And that's one of the big benefits of what we do, and being in the room for that is really fascinating. One of the final things, and I'll shut up very soon, is the really great thing about think tanks is that an idea can go far. If you work in a big institution or government, you know, you'll have this great idea and they'll say, great, you know, let's write that down, and then you'll try and put it in the machine maybe, or they'll say, no, sorry, you're too junior, or no, sorry, that won't work because of political reasons, or just no, sorry. And that's fair enough, that's how those institutions work. If you're in a think tank, you can literally just think up an idea and kind of put it out there, and in 3 months or less, it might be a paper, it might be something that you're pushing, it might be something the newspapers have picked up on. I'll give you a really quick example. I was thinking about a year ago that there's a lot of coverage of TTIP, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, and if any of you are following it, most of it is economic. Whether it's good or it's bad, it's very economic focused. There's very little on the kind of long-term strategic implications. Not in media coverage, not in academia, so I said, well, why don't we do something on that? And in the end, we've managed to find a very smart guy who knows a lot more on it than I do, I'm not a trade expert at all, to write a sort of 10-page paper looking at those long-term effects, and it'll be out in the kind of next couple of months. And that's something where I just kind of thought something one day and suggested we do it, and then it's being done. There's very few places where you can kind of have that, just come up with an idea and it ends up into being something fairly tangible. I don't have my email address up here, but you can find me online. My name is Rory Cannan. It's a very rare name, so you can find me on Twitter really easily, and Facebook, Chatham House website and all that. We have a profile. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rory and Rick, for your presentation. I just want to add something actually. Last year, for our members which are representing a wide range of organizations from diplomatic, corporate, and in the focus group actually what they expect from their policy advisors to skills they have was, and similar to what think tanks produce, they expect them to have this graphic design and video production abilities. Because of the time limitation that they have now in acquiring the information, they are bombarded by reports, they acquire the shortest time that they can spend on an issue and understand this. So the advisor or producers of reports, they expect them to have graphic design. So if you're thinking of pursuing this career, I think video production, or that would be a big addition, or also graphic design into having a more as a strength to pursue this such a career in the future. Because production of reports, maybe it will move from more words and big reports into more concise, small, and maybe it's designed in a different way. And that's in the transition. That actually was one of the outcomes or results of the focus groups we had last year for members, which are mostly from a wide range, most corporates and diplomatic organizations, and also government. So if you have any questions for the speakers, we start.
Hi guys, thank you so much for your talk. My name is Lisman Murati. I'm a UCL graduate in security studies, but also an outer space policy researcher. I've had a chance to do some work with the IISS on their survival publication, and I've done some work with the UN as well. But I'm just wondering whether your organization, I know Patricia Lewis does a lot of work on the Chatham House side, but does your organization work on outer space as much, or do you have any projects
Outer space, no. At this point, we're not doing that much security, although that may change. Yeah, but outer space, no. We got a few people who are doing kind of weapons and drones and these kind of things, but outer space, no.
Would you consider doing the project as well?
I would definitely consider doing it, but possibly, yeah. I mean, that's, you know, one of those things. Definitely get in touch, possibly.
Yeah, any other questions for the speakers? Yes.
I just wanted to ask Ulrika if the ECFR links generally, I guess, with America, China, how much partnership there is with think tanks in other parts of the world?
As far as I can see, institutionally, not so much. We have this European focus, but of course, our researchers is super well connected in their areas of expertise. So, for instance, China, we do really quite a lot in China, and when we put on events there, which we do quite regularly, then it is in cooperation with other think tanks there, or not even only think tanks, but also other kind of institutions. Same, but somewhat less for the US, simply because we don't have a US-focused research program. But of course, you know, everyone pretty much has good links to the US. But there are no institutional think tank links as such.
I have questions to you guys regarding the recruiting process. How long does it take? What should I do? How document what I have to send you back to apply for work or internship?
Well, I'm sure Chatham House has a way more organized process than we do. The way it usually works for us is that we advertise posts on the website, you know, just when it comes up, so have an eye out. I got my job just because I saw the advert on the website, really. If you're trying to apply for an internship position or something, if nothing is there on the website, just basically write an email explaining what you want to do and attach your CV, and then we'll get back to you or not, and, you know, maybe interested or not. But we don't have kind of a real process as such, and quite often it's relatively short notice, and then kind of see whether it works for you or not. But I know that Chatham House is way more organized when it comes to these things. So
we do. So typically for like usual, an advert will be online for 2 weeks. Everything's advertised publicly. Usually we'll put them out in a few newspapers if we can afford it, depending on the budget. For an internship, we can usually turn around a hiring process in about 6 weeks. We don't really, you can do a speculative application if there's nothing going, but I wouldn't suggest that's going to lead to much in most cases. Most of the time, keep your eye out for what's going on. Good opportunities are quite rare, so you kind of have to check regularly. We're working at the moment actually on making a process so you can get job alerts, and so as soon as a job comes out, you can find it. Follow us on LinkedIn, follow us on Twitter is a good way to keeping an eye on, just sort of casually and just checking the website. So we also have fellowships for people from different parts of the world now through our Academy for Leadership. And it's really wide variety. People from all of Asia, Middle East, Russia, Asia, Greece fellowship, Turkey fellowship. I think there's a couple of others, and those are very particular. So we have people who work in the institute from Syria, China, Japan. We often get the question, you know, can I apply from country X? And the visa thing is a nightmare, but those opportunities in the academy are great ways in if anyone's from a different part of the world and doesn't have kind of a European passport.
So there is practically no difference from where people apply.
There's what's
So there is practically no difference from where people apply. You're gonna hire us right away if you like us.
Well, it depends on the role. I mean, the Academy Fellowship roles offer specific areas in the world, but I mean the visa restrictions for people working in the UK, and they are what they are, if that makes sense.
My question was originally for the European Council for a Nations Rep, but you can answer it. I was going to ask, because I saw you had Middle East and North Africa, so I was going to ask what's the extent of your interaction with the Middle East and North Africa, what kind of events and activity do you do, and research do you do regarding that section of the world?
I mean, there I definitely recommend having a look at the website, because that's actually quite a big team and it's not my area of expertise, but we've got people working on, well, Libya, the refugee crisis, Syria, Israel, Palestine, lots of things really, and they're traveling all the time. we're not, as far as I know, putting on too many events over there at the moment. It's rather, us inviting them. We've got lots of conferences by the MENA program going on here in London. Just recently we had the Saudi delegation there, an Iranian delegation, things like that. We did a podcast quite recently on this again as well. So this is one of our most active programs. So have a look at the website, what they do. So basically all the hotspots in the MENA region, which at the moment, as you know, are quite a few. We're doing something on that.
So we've got a team of about 12 people. We quite often do stuff with other institutions over there from various parts of the Gulf, Iran, others. We're actually looking to do a little bit more in Iran now for obvious reasons and try and get some people over there. But it's actually quite difficult to get in Iran an official think tank. And Chatham House is slightly incorrectly seen as part of the British government, even though we're actually independent. So.
Any other questions? Oh, yeah.
Just one more thing. I was going to ask if the Chatham House is an independent institution, why is it called the Royal Institute?
Well, I mean, you have the Royal Academy, you have loads of different royal institutions which are independent. We were founded in 1920, and we were originally the British Institute of International Affairs, and then in 1926 we got our Royal Charter. What that means now, there's actually some brilliant conspiracy theories that we're controlled by the Queen, and through us the Queen controls the world. And I can tell you, it doesn't work that way, unfortunately. In practice, that means that she is our patron. She opened up our Academy for Leadership. We have an annual prize, which is our kind of once-a-year big thing that's gone to people like Hillary Clinton and Médecins Sans Frontières before. And we usually have a royal giving the prize. So that's the kind of link. It doesn't mean day to day that we kind of take our orders from Buckingham Palace.
Yeah, just add actually to your question on the Middle East or for the European Council. Actually, in the past we worked with the director of the Middle East program, Daniel Levy, in our Middle East forum, and also another gentleman and also lady from the Iran program. So that's our experience with the European Council on the terms of the Middle East expertise. Yes.
I just wanted to ask Rory, I know from experience you've got a great team on the Americas team and very well led by Xenia and yourself and Jacob, etc. So just teamwork and the individual, that balance within the team, I know works very well in your team. So just generally within think tanks and the importance of leadership, etc.
Yeah, I mean, it varies. So some teams are very small, some are very big. In almost all cases, you're going to be working in a team to get things done. So you're very right. It's an important skill to be able to work in a small or a big team. It's hard to predict if you're looking from the outside at various roles whether the team you're going on to will be huge or small, or you might be part of a small team in a big team, if that makes sense. But research is a collaborative process. Even people like my boss will send the paper around and everyone will comment on it and we'll sort of go back and forth on ways to change it. That's a very important part of the process. Yeah.
I think that's it for this session. We have 45 minutes break. You can have lunch at the back. Also, we start at 2 with representative of the EU on career.
It was fun.